Hello, I'm John Walter, instructor for the course, and in this video I'm going to talk about two additional research tools you can use to find sources when you're trying to identify sources for your research, and also the tools for engaging in citation tracing, specifically for we've got our worksheet number 8 where you're asked to trace a citation in one of the articles that you've been reading for your research. And if you want to do the A-level project option 2, tracing the production of knowledge, you need to do a number of citation traces. And so these tools also will help you with those. So you can follow the production of knowledge over multiple generations of scholarship, as Latour talks about in the literature chapter of Science in Action. So the first one I want to talk about is the Web of Science, and then I'm going to talk about Google Scholar. I'm actually going to jump a little bit between the two to also do some comparisons. To find them, so Google Scholar is available on the open web. It's available from Google. It's scholar.google.com is the actual URL. And if you just actually go to Google and Google Scholar or Google Scholar, you'll find it. And then the Web of Science is one of the proprietary databases that we have access to through the Mason University Library. And so you want to go to the library to get to the Web of Science. You could just go into the search databases, type in Web of Science, and you'll go directly to it. I have it here under the W's because what I want to point out is that if you come here, you can read if you find the Web of Science core collection here, you can read sort of what indices it covers. More importantly, or just as importantly, there's also you'll note here, view a tutorial on this database here. So as you can see, not every database in our library has tutorials, little video tutorials. The Web of Science core collection does. If you were to click on that, you would come here to this YouTube video, which is 3 minutes 26 seconds long. Gives you a general overview of the Web of Science as a quick crash course into using that. And so you might find that useful. So the Web of Science, this is kind of what you look at when you kind of come here. You'll note that there's multiple databases. You can do all databases. You can do Web of Science and a number of other databases. You can sort of narrow down your search or make it or expand it as you wish. And note that there's the help stuff here, so that you can kind of come over here and if you want a little more information about how to use Web of Science, especially if you're finding it really interesting and you want to really dig down into it, you can kind of use these resources. Here, what I want to do is I want to look up, this is the title of an article. It's the journal, A Conceptual Landscape of Digital Curation, published in the Journal of Documentation in 2016 by Alex Poole. So I know the information. I found this to be a very useful article, and I want to do both a citation trace on it, so I want to see who cited it, and so I can follow up and sort of see how they used it, and I want to find articles that are related to it because it's really useful, and so people who are engaging with it or things that are related to it may be useful for my research. I'll note that there's a number of search options you can also engage in, including also search alerts up here. You can set stuff here if you want to. You can do author searches, cited, reference searches, advanced search, various search functions. We're going to just do this basic topic search. We're going to click on that, and it brings us to here. So we can double check. Yes, this is actually the bibliographic information, so I'm looking at the appropriate article. I've got, again, a number of ways I can sort of modify my searches, learn things about it. I've got some other stuff here, so you can create alert. If I'm interested in this, I want to know when they update the database. If there's something that cites it, I can get an automatic alert telling me, hey, someone has engaged in cited the conceptual landscape of digital curation. So it can push notifications to me. You'll note over here we have analyze results, create citation report, and time cited. And the time cited here I want to stress is only scholarship that's indexed in, cataloged in the Web of Science core collection. This is important because they only have 9 citations. If we use Google Scholar, which we will in a couple minutes, we'll see that Google Scholar has 42 separate pieces of scholarship, are 42 things that cite the this article. So, there's a huge discrepancy there. That's because the Web of Science is only talking about, it's only cataloging the citations of things that the Web of Science has indexed itself. So it's a closed ecosystem. It's a closed system where they're only going to give you results for things that they actually are part of their system. And so whether if you're reporting on the number of citations, whether you're using Web of Science or Google Scholar or any other sort of citation metric system, what you want to do is you want to note the date that you get the results, and you want to note where it's from. So, I'm making this video on March 17th of 2021. So I would write something along the lines of on March 17th, 2021, the Web of Science lists 9 citations of the conceptual landscape of digital curation. That way my author knows where my information is coming from. They know that what the date was, so they're going to know that, if they're now reading this in 2028, they're like, oh, maybe I ought to go check, because there might be a lot more. Though if they're like, read this and they're like, well, okay, it was March 17th and I'm reading this on March 30th, they're probably, there might be something, but it's not going to be a whole lot change. So you want to tell your audience when you got your information. So I click on this time cited, I click on this information here, and this is going to take me to the 9 articles that actually, inside the Web of Science, that cite my source, that cite the conceptual landscape of digital curation. So I might find, any of these might be really useful for me, for my project, because I've already decided that the conceptual landscape of digital curation is important. It's for me, and therefore anyone who's citing it is potentially of interest to me. So I would want to then, this is one way of finding very potentially useful sources. Then we can see how many times like these were cited when they were published, things like that. So that's one way that we can use the Web of Science. We can also come here, we see these analyze results. So we can click on analyze results, and this is just going to give us information about the web, about the conceptual landscape of digital curation. We want to make sure that what we're actually looking at when we do this, because if you think you're actually like, I'm getting all the things that cited in the conceptual landscape of digital curation, but you're actually in the page where you're in the site, the system. If you think you're trying to get all the ones that cited it, but the system is actually working on just the one record, the conceptual landscape of digital curation, you're going to get very different information. Funding agencies, there's no funding agencies. Web categories. So we've talked about web science categories. This is basically the information related to the controlled vocabulary. Remember, we talked about the difference between keywords and controlled vocabulary. Databases, library systems, classification systems have controlled vocabulary, the terms that they use to organize information. And so the controlled vocabulary used by the Web of Science includes these 2 categories: computer science information systems and information science library science. So the conceptual landscape of digital curation falls under both of these 2 controlled vocabulary terms. We can see when it was published. Of course, we're just looking for the one article, so it's going to tell us it was published in 2016, which we already know. We can see what organizations that it's related to. Drexel University. Alex Poole is affiliated with Drexel University, so that is who's connected to it. Funding agencies. His research for this article was not funded by anyone, so there is no information there. We can see a bunch. We can come down and see a bunch of more information there. So this is just information about this article. We can also look at a create citation report. We're going to see that it has, we're looking at 1, it has an H index of 1, cited 9 times, and so if you remember, H index, there's a little information bar here, so we can see what this means. If you remember, H index is a way of ranking publications based off of how often they're cited, where they're published in, etc. There's a whole mathematical equations connected with that. We've talked about that briefly. And again, if you were really interested in finding out more than what just the Web of Science says, that the Wikipedia entry for H index goes into some detail about how H index works for ranking. So where am I again? Yes, so here we are. We might come over here and click on the 9 cited articles analyze. Let's see, does this going to give us, yes, so what that does, this is giving us all 9 articles that cite the conceptual landscape of digital creation. This is now giving us information for all of those. So the categories, still, information library science and computer science information systems. Publication years, now we can see we've gotten much broader. So the article, Conceptual Landscape, published in 2016. We see that there was a few in 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. And we can see here, how many and what percentage of the publishing. Document types. So 8 of these were scholarly articles. One was early access. Early access means that it's basically sort of before formal publication, it's made available online. So that's one of the articles that's being, that the Web of Science is indexing here. And then a review. And so there's a review. We can look at which is the review. Research 2.0 and review research data services. So that's that article. What is the early access article? We can click on that and find out what the early access article is. We can then find out what the 8 articles are by also clicking on the view records for that. So organizations, we can see there's a whole lot of organizations, much more than just the one. We've got a number of organizations connected to. What percentage? So these are, if we were interested in that. Funding agencies, we're going to now see that there are actually some of the research some of the scholarship that cited the conceptual landscape of digital creation was funded. It was funded by, formally funded, and these are the agencies that funded them. We can see who the authors are, who cited. So Poole cited himself twice. So other people have cited him. Source titles, where were these things published? So we can see, where the citations were, where were they published, if there's book series, conference proceedings, what countries, group authors, no group authors languages that this stuff is published in, 2 in Portuguese, 7 in English, excuse me, organizations, affiliated again, and grant numbers. So funding grants, there's grant numbers. So we can find a whole bunch of information. For our purposes, most of this is not, you're not going to go in this much in depth, but these do exist. You have these options. So I want to just show you one other one. So massive black hole binaries. This is a much bigger one. I'm just going to do a quick run so you can see the difference here. So this is 6 results. So sometimes when you put in the title, I put in the exact title, but it gave us 6 results. So this is actually the one I want. So I want to select it. We can see that it was cited 69 times. Has 127 cited references. So we can databases. So we click on that, we can see all the people who cited the article, and etc. So we can kind of, again, go through and check out the various things as well that we have the options for. Okay, now I want to show you Google Scholar. So again, Google Scholar, it's just scholar.google.com. You can just go to Google and type in Google Scholar and you'll get Google Scholar. I have here, again, the conceptual landscape of digital curation. We can then do the search for that. We can see that they have, it's giving us like 20, the Google large 28,300 results of things connected to it. But what we want to do is we want to look specifically at. So this is one way we might find sources, but we want to look specifically at the article itself. I want to note that there's some things here. So this is the article. We can see there's a star. The star lets you sort of flag it to remember it. This, the quotation mark gives you cites. So basically, it uses MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, and Vancouver styles. I'll note that in most of these are not current. They have the basic format, but they are not perfect. So you generally, like for instance, there's no page numbers on this. So and if you need to have page numbers, you need to then add page numbers. So it's, you can copy and paste this, but you need to then revise it so that it actually follows proper formatting. So it does sort of save a little bit of time because you don't have to type all that information in. You just have to edit what's there. So we can see that the conceptual landscape of digital creation was cited 42 times. That's what Google Scholar has identified. Again, that doesn't mean that it's only been cited 42 times. It's just what Google Scholar recognizes based off of the way Google Scholar does searches and its algorithms and everything. So, so again, you want to, if you note that it was if it's cited 42 times, you want to indicate that with the date you got the information, and you want to say that it was from Google Scholar. So let's take a look here. I just clicked on cited by 42 times. We're going to come here. We can see now that these are the 42 citing sources, citing the 42 citations that people who cite um, the conceptual landscape of digital creation. So this is again, a way you can get sources. You can find out if they cite the article that you find interesting, there's at least the potential that they're going to be of interest to you. So that's one way of doing that. I'm using Google Scholar to help you with that. We then can see related articles, so you could actually see here there's 101 based on Google's algorithms. They have 101 things that they think are related to the conceptual landscape of digital creation. That would be it. So basically that thing, 101 things would be of interest. So that's another way of finding additional, um, another way of finding additional potential sources. Some of these will cite the conceptual landscape of digital creation, some of them will not. So that's how it differs from just looking at what cites it. We also have here this idea of all of the versions. And what this is that these are all the 4 versions that Google has indexed. And you'll see one is academia, edu. Basically, that's sort of like a LinkedIn. It's a social media site for academics, and many people put up versions of if they can get around the copyright or they get permission, they can put up preprints or something so they can make their sort of scholarship available connected to their account. And so that's indexed here. So there is the full text theoretically from there. There is also ua.edu has, or actually, that's right, this is the 101 things that are connected. So you can see those there. But let's go back to all the versions of the conceptual landscape of digital curation we actually have. You can see here there's the Journal of Documentation from emerald.com. We have our library has the database for that. That's sort of like the database that indexes the full text stuff for the Journal of Documentation. There's Alex Poole has uploaded a copy of the article to his academia.edu account. This Ingentra Connect also has a copy. And then there's researchgate.net, which is another sort of database sort of service. They have a copy as well. So those are the 4 versions. Okay, so that's the basics of Google Scholar. You can also set up alerts with Google Scholar as well. So that's, you can use, like I said, you can use both the Web of Science and Google Scholar to help you, if you're doing a citation trace, to help you find people that cite your article or your chosen piece of scholarship. And you can also use both to help you find other potential sources, things that are related to your article. And you can, as you saw with Web of Science, you can find out a whole lot more information if you want to see like who funded it, connections. So if you're doing citation traces and you want to see if there's connections between people, that can also sometimes help you. You can see like if there's a bunch of people from Drexel University citing the article from Drexel University, you might then go see if they're all the same person, or if there's multiple people. If there's multiple people, then you assume, well, you've got like 4 different people at Drexel University citing this article, whose authors at Drexel University, they know each other. And that tells you something in terms of citation tracing. It could be completely entirely authentic and legitimate for them to be citing, but there are reasons, as we look at the Amy Robillard stuff on her kind of taxonomy of why people cite and what citations do for the author who is citing, for the author who has been cited, and for the reader. So there are reasons there why people at the same university might cite each other. Okay, so that's a basic overview of these 2 resources, and thank you.